Okay, so you still can see my screen, can you? Yep, great. So as I was saying, legal little disclaimer, this is not legal advice and really for information as a guide only. And, if you are thinking about getting further advice and information, I advise you to go to a lawyer. So, we'll be having a little bit of interaction today, and I hope you've all got a phone with you where you can take a photo of this QR code and answer some questions along the way with this presentation. So, if you grab your phone and select the camera setting and hold it up to the screen, and hopefully you'll go to a website called slido.com where you will be asked for that reference code, and you'll be able to interact with us in hopefully a fun way. Has everyone done that? I can't see, but Danielle has got her hand up, her thumbs up. So at least one person's worked it out. So that's great. So we'll be asking a few questions. So go through that QR code. Hopefully you've all done that. So the first question we've got is why are you here today? So you've got three options there. If you could answer that, that will give me a sense of why you're here. Oh, we've got a few people who said their boss made them come, so that's good. All right. I think that some people are still answering, but on the whole, it looks like the big majority, 75%, are currently on a governing committee or a board. So that's really good because that will be able to, you'll be able to apply this knowledge straight away. We do have nearly 20% of people who are thinking about joining a governing committee or board. Again, that's really good because you will be well ahead of understanding what some of your obligations are around the governing of a organisation. And then we have a small number whose boss made them come, and that's okay. Hopefully you will still get some value out of today. All right. The next question is, in one word, describe how you feel about this topic, the topic of governing rules. And absolutely feel free to share all negative and hopefully positive words. Not afraid to have you, say how you feel. We've got a few people overwhelmed. And a few people thinking that it's an important topic. Some not sure. We've got a few people thinking compliance. So the larger the word, the more people who are saying that word. So that's great. Thank you all for doing that. We'll move. Oh, there's still some people typing, I think. So we've got a few small, mind-blowing, outdated, interesting, excited, proactive, interested, dry. But on the whole, most of you think it's important but you're feeling a bit unsure and overwhelmed about, the compliance aspect of governing. So hopefully we'll be able to make you feel a lot more comfortable at the end of today and the end of this session. So we might move on to having actual information about governing documents and why they're important. So basically, governing rules are a legal document that covers how the organisation must be set up and run. All incorporated organisations must by law have a governing document. And as I said, they can vary depending on, when they were last updated. But generally speaking, they kind of cover some general areas that we'll be covering today. And they can have a fair amount of detail in there that if you're not familiar, but you're on a governing board, you could potentially be not, doing all of your due diligence if you're not following what's in your constitution or governing rules. Okay, so we have another poll here. Do you know where to find your rules documents? So for the 75% of you who are on a board, that relates to the rules document for the board that you're on. If you're not yet on a board, it might be a little bit harder to know where to find the rules document, but I can give you some tips about where you potentially might be able to find it, depending on the organisation. So I'm really pleased that the majority of you know where to find your rules document, so that's really good. But we do have a small number who don't know. So we might have a chat about that, about where you could potentially find your rules document later in the workshop. So a little bit about different legal structures for different organisations, because that can explain some of the differences around different governing documents. So a company limited by guarantee, that's generally a not-for-profit company. They have members rather than shareholders, and the members agree to provide a guarantee up to a nominal amount. Sometimes it's $1, sometimes it's $20, and they're national. Those organisations, or can be. They're not restricted to a state-based organisation. An incorporated association is also often a not-for-profit, and they have governing rules that are defined according to state-based legislation, as opposed to a company limited by guarantee, which is governed by the Corporations Act, which is a federal legislation. So generally, incorporated associations are, your member-based not-for-profits that are located in a particular state. So often they're your community-based organisations, your sporting clubs and things like that. Then there's a range of other kind of types of organisations, like a cooperative. So that's a democratic organisation controlled by members with no distribution of the surpluses. So clubs can fit into that category as well. There are Indigenous corporations that have specific legislation for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander controlled organisations. So they are registered with the Office of the Indigenous Registrar, And so they have a different governing rules book. Then there are charitable trusts where assets are held by a trustee for others as beneficiaries. A proprietary company tends to be a for-profit company. And then we have companies limited by shares also, quite often profit-based organisations. So the reason I talk about this is because depending on the organisation type, there will be different kind of model rules or different requirements according to the legislation. Generally speaking, it's all very similar, but there are some slight differences. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail around those differences today, but just suffice to say that depending on the legal structure of the organisation that you're on, that could be why there might be some differences. If you're on, a different, maybe you're on two different committees and you're kind of looking at the constitutions and they're a bit different, it could be because they're different types of companies. But basically, all of these organisations are governed by different legislation that identify the specifics around what you need to have in your rule book. So the incorporated associations, and I'm using the South Australian legislation here, that's the Associations Incorporation Act 1985. The governing document tends to be called rules or articles of association. For a company limited by guarantee under the Corporations Act, they tend to be called constitution, or they could be called replaceable rules. For Indigenous corporations, their governing document tends to be called a rule book. A trust will have a trust deed, and a cooperative will have a constitution. So they're basically different names, but they're all the same purpose. They are the blueprint around how you govern your organisation. Katie, do you have a question?
There's a couple of questions come up on the chat line.
Thank you.
One's from Danielle. Does the responsibility of committee members differ between companies and corporations versus incorporated associations?
Sorry, what was the first part of that question?
Does the responsibility of committee members differ between companies and corporations versus incorporated associations?
No, not really. Pretty much as a responsible officer of the organisation, you are effectively bound by whatever is in your constitution, but your responsibilities generally are the same. It might come down to kind of what your liability is around. As I said, there's kind of for the company limited by guarantee, there's kind of a limit on the individual liability for responsible people, but generally speaking, your responsibilities are the same.
And another one, what's the difference between a proprietary company and a proprietary limited company, or are they the same?
So generally a proprietary limited company, okay. I think a lawyer might need to answer that question. I think that it's about the limit of the liability. So a company that is limited means that they're limited to the level of liability, but a proprietary company tends to be a for-profit company. So, if you've got XYZ Limited, that tends to be a non-profit company. If you've got XYZ Proprietary Limited, that's generally a for-profit company.
Right.
Okay, Hopefully I've
thanks.
answered those questions.
Yep. I'll see a lawyer.
Yeah, see a lawyer. All right. Thank you for interrupting me there, Katie. So we'll go back to sharing my screen. Feel free to jump in again if you have other questions. All right. So why is it important? So as I mentioned, the Constitution or the rules or whatever it might be called, your governing document is a legally binding document that's linked to those different legislation, different acts. And all office holders, so that's like chair, treasurer, secretary, any kind of board member, they have to comply with what is written in there. So you have a right and a responsibility to comply with what is in your constitution. It's also good governance to be accountable to all your stakeholders to follow what's in your constitution. And there are potentially penalties that can apply if you don't follow your constitution. And I'll be giving some examples of those later in the workshop. But if you don't comply with the governing document, you can potentially face litigation or penalties or even prosecution, as well as reputational damage or forced closure of your association. They're pretty extreme, but you know, they have been known to happen. So I'll be sharing some examples of those towards the end. So you can change your rules. You're not bound to kind of have them continue in perpetuity as they were when your organisation was first established. In fact, it's actually quite a good idea to review your rules every, few years. I'm suggesting every 5 years. It doesn't have to be every 5 years, but, every few years, it's a good idea to review them and potentially change them. But the rules will often specify how you have to change them, and it could be by special resolution at a meeting, maybe at a special meeting or at your AGM. It will depend on what's in your rules. But by all means, you can change them and update them if you feel like they're no longer working for you, so long as all the members agree to changing them. All right, so that was a little overview. Now we're going to go into a little bit more detail around different sections and how to interpret them. So as I mentioned, there are generally model rules for organisations that are attached to the legislation as regulations, and you can generally use them as a starting point if, like, you're starting up a new organisation. You can use that as the basic format. If there is anything that's in the model rules that are not in your organisation's rule book, such as an omission, or if there is a conflict, then generally the legislation will overrule it. So if your organisation's constitution is silent on a particular topic, but it's covered in the model rules, then it will, what is in the model rules will apply. I might just stop sharing the screen at this point and just show you an example of those model rules, just so that you see what they look like. And we'll be going into each of these sections in more detail. I'll just make that a bit bigger so Hopefully you can read that. So you can see these are example rules from the South Australian Government Consumer and Business Services, which is the government department that oversees the association legislation. And you can see that they say they have sections, and then they give a bit of a description around what you should cover in those sections. So, they've got name, some definitions, what the object or purpose of your association is, what the powers are, different types of membership and subscription. So you can see through that document that they have particular sections that are in the replaceable rules or the model rules. And then you have specific things for your organisation that you include to have as your constitution. So I'll just go back now to the presentation and we'll go through each of those sections. So the first part of your rules cover the purpose and objectives, which is why you exist and what you're trying to achieve. If you want to get tax deductible gift recipient status, there's usually particular phrases that are used in order to meet that criteria. So sometimes they can sound a bit odd, but that is probably because they're trying to get tax deductible charity status. But generally it will give a description around what the purpose of your organisation is. Then there's a section around the powers and duties of your office bearers. So that can include things like how they're appointed, what length of term they have, how they might resign or be removed as office bearers. So that will cover, what those office bearers can do and not do. There will usually be information in there around how you make decisions, what the minimum attendance is, which is usually called a quorum, how many people you need to have at a meeting in order to be able to make decisions. What the voting rules are. Sometimes they might go into a bit of detail around, how the voting occurs, what minutes need to be recorded, and any dispute resolution. Question, Katie?
Sorry, I'm clapping and raising my hand all at the same time. With the quorum, how is that generally decided? Is it a percentage of how many people are on a committee, or is there a rule of thumb?
Look, I've seen all sorts in there. It comes down to what's in your particular constitution. As a rule of thumb, generally it's 50% as a kind of minimum, but I have seen constitutions that kind of say a minimum of 2 people when there might be, 8 people on a committee or a board. So you can have it as whatever you want, but generally speaking, 50% is a good rule of thumb. Any other questions? Nope. I'll move on then. So then generally there's a section about membership, and that can include what types of members, what fees those members might pay, how you record the list of your members, and how you remove members who resign. I should actually say, Katie, that we are going to be sending a PDF copy of these PowerPoint presentation to everyone. So if you don't want to have to kind of make lots of notes, we will have this sent to everyone. Then there will be a section about meetings, what types of meetings and how frequent those meetings should be, and what kind of notice you need to give to your members around the meetings, particularly around AGMs or special meetings that might be called. So that will generally be a section around different meetings. So generally you'll see AGM as a section, and then special meeting, and then ordinary meeting. But we'll be going through some examples, so you'll be able to see that. And then usually there's a section or several sections around reporting about your legal and financial obligations around record keeping and reporting to whoever is your regulator. So as I mentioned, it relates to what type of organisation, what type of legal structure you are, as to who you have to report to. And it might also depend on if you're registered with the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profit Commission, the ACNC. You might need to report to them. If you're not, if you're, registered tax deductible charity, you might have to kind of report to the ATO. So there are multiple different kind of reporting obligations that you might have. So they're the key sections. I'll just stop sharing before we go to what could go wrong, and I'll go to show you that example of what I'll just stop sharing that and go to the Penola Festival Association. We'll go through in a bit of detail. We'll have a look at what that looks like for this particular organisation. Do we have anyone on the meeting who's a member or a committee member of the Penola Festival Association Incorporated?
Well, there are actually. I'm a recently retired member, but there's Peter and Kat CSC who are very involved.
Okay, great. Well, it's your lucky day. We're going through your rules of association as an example. So do tell me if this is too small for you to read, and I'll make it a bit bigger. But you can see in this governing rules that you can see that the sections are similar to what we just talked about. We've got definitions, we've got the purpose of the association, we've got the powers and duties of the committee, and there's also subcommittees there. We've got who is a member and how they are eligible and how they can resign. We've got information there about the committee, the composition of the committee, and committee meetings. Then we've got further information about the various types of meetings that occur. We've got annual general meeting, special general meeting, notices, and voting at those meetings. And then at the end, we've got financial reporting, what accounts need to be kept, and then some details there at the end about winding up the association, and also changes to the constitution. So we'll go through in a little bit of detail now, just to show you by way of example what this particular organisation has. So the purpose of this organisation is to, conduct a festival and foster arts in the region. And then there's also some ancillary purposes around promoting the area as a tourist destination as well. So this organisation is a not-for-profit. And they have a committee that controls the organisation. So that committee has the control of the funds and the property of the association. And then, okay, so here, I don't know if you can read that, but they've got a quorum there for a subcommittee, which is 2 members of the committee. There's no mention of quorum yet for the committee, but maybe that might be further down in the meeting section. We'll have a look when we get there. So basically the committee can establish subcommittees to conduct further business. So they don't mention what subcommittees, so that's fairly free for them. Sometimes I see organisations specify particular subcommittees, so they might specify a finance and risk and audit committee, for example. That's a common one. So now we've got the members who's eligible. So for this particular organisation, they have eligibility for membership. Not all organisations have that, but this one does. And they've said that any person, corporation, or business may become a member of the association, so long as they agree to support the objects and be bound by its rules. They're proposed by one member and seconded by another and accepted by the committee. So there's some further information there around resignation. So here, liability of members. So the members are not liable to pay any debts incurred by the association, including the costs of winding up the association. Okay, so in terms of the committee, the governing committee for this organisation, so this committee has to have a minimum of 3 members. And those 3 members are a president, a secretary, and a treasurer. And they're elected positions, which they hold for a period of 2 years. Sometimes you see quite common 3 years as being a common period. Sometimes it can just be 1 year. So here in this one, we've got 2 years. They do have to be a natural person. So it looks like you can't have a corporation be a member of the committee. It has to be an actual person. And they're elected to the committee at a general meeting. Then there's some information there about vacancies on the committee. And there's some details here about those 3 functions, those 3 that were mentioned, the president. So the president is the chair of the meeting. The secretary keeps all the minutes and agendas and any clerical work. And the treasurer receives all the money and makes payments on behalf of the association and is responsible for all of the balance sheet and financial statements. Okay, now I mentioned before there was a reference to a quorum of subcommittee earlier on, but now we have in the committee meetings, a quorum here is 3 members of the committee. So we've seen earlier that a minimum of 3 members are required for this committee, which is the president, the secretary, and the treasurer. And then for the quorum, we have a minimum of 3 members of the committee. So if this committee only had 3 members, those 3 that are specified, then all 3 would have to attend a meeting for a quorum to be for a quorum to be there, which means that if they didn't have those 3 members at the meeting, they didn't reach quorum, they couldn't make any decisions. They can still have a meeting, but you can't make any decisions. However, because this organisation says it's a minimum of 3 members, this committee might actually have 6 members, and then only 3 need to be in attendance, and it couldn't be any 3. Does that make sense? Yep. Okay, so now this particular committee, they've specified in their meetings that decisions will be made by a majority of votes, with a chairperson having the final vote if all the committee members are equal. So if you've got 4 people there and 2, or let's say you've got 5 people and you're excluding the chair, and you've got 2 people who say yes and 2 people who say no, then the chair will have the deciding vote in that decision. Not all organisations have decisions by vote. Some prefer to go by consensus, or they might just be silent on this in their constitution. Looks like they're allowing people to attend the meeting by telephone or video or teleconference. And it looks like if in the event a matter arises that in the opinion of the secretary cannot be carried over, the secretary may circulate and the committee may pass a resolution before the next committee meeting if a minimum of 60% of members of the committee agree to the circular resolution by email. So I think what that is saying is if they make a decision at that meeting that they need further information and they can't actually make a decision, but it's urgent and it needs a decision quickly, then the secretary will send out by email for that vote. So that's how I interpret that section. So it's effectively saying, well, we can make decisions out of session, not in the meeting. There's a mention there of conflict of interest and information about the name of the organisation. Now we've got the actual meeting sections where it talks about having an annual general meeting. So that will be every year, where certain business is expected at that annual general meeting. Then a special general meeting can be called at any time, so long as there's 21 days notice. And then a general meeting, you need to give 14 days notice. So you can see that there's different notice periods for different types of meetings. Again, there's a reference to here about voting, and a general meeting would be all members, not just the committee members, but all members of this organisation, and each member of the association has 1 vote at a general meeting. There's also reference here to proxies. So a member can appoint a proxy if they can't attend a general meeting or the annual general meeting. And then lastly, we've got some further information here about the financial accounts that are to be kept, and some information here about a public fund that is held by this organisation. And as you can see, they've said that the rules would not be amended except by ordinary resolution at an annual general meeting, or by special resolution at a special general meeting. Does that make sense to people? Any questions that anyone has on how, what we've gone through this as this example? No? All right. Well, I might go back to what can go wrong, and some examples about what might be problems that you might encounter if you don't follow your constitution. Oh, might help if I actually do the presentation. Okay. What can go wrong? So I've got some examples here of some organisations that have been fined and prosecuted for doing the wrong thing. So the Australian Workers Union, they failed to keep an accurate register of their members for 7 years, and the organisation was fined $290,000. So that's a fairly substantial amount of money, simply for failing to keep an accurate register of their members. The Transport Workers Union.
Excuse me, Natasha,
Yep.
can I just interrupt there? Is
Yep.
that because they didn't keep them? You have to keep members' names for 7 years, or for 7 years they didn't have their members listed? You don't have to keep members.
They have to keep records every year, and they didn't keep records for 7 years. So
Okay.
every year they didn't.
Yeah. They don't have to keep a register for 7 years.
No. Well, no. I mean, I think that again, it might depend on kind of what's in their constitution, but it was because they didn't have a register of their members over a time period of 7 years. The Transport Workers Union secretary, that person acted improperly to gain a financial advantage of $140,000, and that individual was fined $50,000. The Musicians Union, they failed to prepare financial reports for 5 years. Again, they meant to do it every year, and they didn't do it for 5 years. The organisation was fined $76,000, and the secretary, as an individual, was fined $17,000. And the Australian Hotels Association, they failed to conduct elections. So their constitution specified that they had to hold elections for their office bearers. And they didn't update the list of the office holders with the regulator for 17 years. So it's a fairly long period of time that they failed to do those two things. And the organisation was fined $157,000. So as you can see, in those examples, no one kind of went to jail, but they did suffer pretty substantial fines that they had to pay. And I personally wouldn't want to be fined $50,000 or $17,000. I mean, admittedly, these are fairly, these were instances of fairly significant and over a long period of time, failing to do the right thing, and so that's why they were fined. A question, Katie?
So with the musician, this came from Janet, with the Musicians Union fine, the secretary is fined, but shouldn't it have been the treasurer? What's the difference between those two?
Well, that's a really good question. Let me actually just pull up the actual example. So that was the musicians. Here we go. So the Federal Secretary of the Musicians Union of Australia was responsible for ensuring compliance by each reporting unit, and that person admitted that they had failed to exercise their duties with the care and diligence that a reasonable person would. So that is why it was the secretary and not the treasurer on this particular occasion. For example, the example that we had with the Panola Festival, it's probably more likely to be the treasurer. But in this particular example, it was the secretary of a national musicians union. So I guess in a way that they were possibly considered more like the president or the chair. And so their particular governing rules said that their secretary was responsible for ensuring that they prepare the financial reports in a timely manner, and that is why it was the secretary who got fined. Do we have another question?
Yep, Craig says, what event created action after 17 years? Why did it go so long?
So the failure was between 2007 and 2012. And I don't know that I've actually got the details around why it was found, unless they had a change of secretary who suddenly went, we haven't been doing this. But I actually don't have in the summary that I have to hand the level of detail that explains why or how it came to come to prosecution. So sorry, I don't have the answer to that one.
So a question from me. So apart from lodging your reports at the end of the financial year to an accountant, what other like trigger points are there to be checked that you're doing the right thing? And is there a degree of, waiving that, we don't know, you don't know what you don't know? So if you just volunteers and you haven't really got across it, will they understand if you do something wrong?
Unfortunately, no. It is your obligation as an office holder to understand your duties. And so therefore it's important that you read your governing rules and understand what your obligations are. Generally speaking, you need to provide sort of financial documents annually to whoever is your regulator, depending on what your legal structure is, and to also provide sort of reports to your members, whoever is your members, also on an annual basis as well. But again, it really comes down to whatever is in your particular governing rules you need to comply with.
Another question from Eliza. Can you use a general meeting to discuss where compliance is at? E.g., at a regular monthly meeting, check if office holders list has been updated with the register, or does this have to be done outside of a meeting?
No, absolutely. I encourage committee members or board members to look at compliance matters in a in a normal board meeting. You might want to have like a calendar, depending on, the extent of what your compliance obligations are. You might want to make sure at certain points of the year that you're looking at making sure that you're compliant with all of your obligations. So, you might want to, towards the, as we, get towards the end of a financial year, make sure that you're kind of covering off all your financial obligations. And then maybe at another point in the year, you might want to look at what other obligations you have. So you don't have to do it all in one hit. You can spread it out over a sort of a 12-month period, but I definitely agree it's worth putting it in as an agenda item for a couple of your meetings to make sure that you are compliant. No other questions at this point?
Not at this point. Thank you.
No worries. All right, so we have gone through one example. What I might do at this point, because you might be a bit sick of hearing the sound of my voice, we're going to move into some breakout rooms. And I'd like you all to, if you can, have to hand the Narrow Court Men's Shed Constitution. And because I will be asking each group to have a look at a particular question and report back. So you'll be assigned a breakout room, and depending on which breakout room you're in, you'll have a particular question that I'd like you to discuss, and then report back in about sort of 10 minutes. How are we going with time? So we've been going for an hour. So 10 minutes to have a look at these questions. So we'll have 4 breakout rooms. So if you can just take a note of these questions so that you know what question it is that you are answering when you go into your breakout room. So breakout room 1, I want you to have a look at the eligibility requirements for members and what details you're required to keep around the members in terms of the member register. And I'd like you to report back to the whole group. I'd like you to nominate someone who's willing to speak on behalf of the group to tell us what are the member eligibility and register details for the Narrow Court Men's Shed. Breakout room 2, I'd like you to have a look at the office holder positions. What are they? How many are there? What are the requirements around those office holder positions? And what numbers are required for a quorum of a meeting? Breakout room 3, I'd like you to have a look at how are the office holders for the Narrow Courts Men's Shed appointed? How are they appointed? If you can report back on that. And then lastly, for breakout room 4, can you please have a look at what are the requirements around the annual general meeting? So if you can each have a look at the sections in the Constitution for those 4 topics and report back in 10 minutes when we might give you, it won't take you very long. How about we give you 5 minutes to have a conversation about those 4 topics and then report back. Remember to identify the person who's going to speak on your behalf and report back in 5 minutes. So I'll create the breakout rooms and you'll all be automatically assigned to a particular room. Any questions before I do that? Nope. Okay. All right, welcome back. Hopefully you had a chance to answer all those questions in the time allocated. Okay, so breakout room 1, your question was about member eligibility and register details. Who from breakout room 1 is the nominated spokesperson? We don't have anyone? Who discussed member eligibility and is prepared to tell us all about it? No one? Breakout room 1? You didn't make any decisions about who was eligible to be a member and what register details you needed to have?
I can go Natasha if no one else in our group wants to.
Thank you, Kim.
Okay, so it was the membership type was in 5.1. So it was any person that supports the objectives of the shed and agrees to be bound by its rules and that they also pay their membership. It can be a person of any age or gender, but there was the association had special emphasis on the needs and interests of males. There were no prerequisites for membership and no assessment, so they didn't care if you could swing a hammer well or not. Members needed to be could be a natural person, an incorporated or unincorporated association or an agency or a department of government. And then for the register of members, they needed to have their name and address of each member of the shed. They needed to record their telephone number and their email address as applicable, and also the date on which the person became a member.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Kim. So you can see that, there's a fair amount of detail that you have to keep and record for the members for that particular organisation. Not all organisations have that level of detail that needs to be kept on a register. So thank you for sharing that. So group 2, you were looking at office holder positions and quorum numbers. Who is prepared to give us some information about what you found around the office holder positions in group 2?
Yeah, I'll give that a go.
Thank you, Danielle.
Been dobbed in by Kat and other people, so that's fine. We got too busy gossiping. So the quorum numbers are in 6.3D, and that outlines that it is the quorum of the committee shall be half plus one of the members of the committee. There probably is also another quorum around the actual meetings in there, which we got gossiping and didn't find. But Kerry put us on to 6.2 around the appointment of the committee, a minimum of 6, a maximum of 8, which should include, we had to look up Viz, a chairperson, vice chair, secretary, treasurer, and up to 4 members of general membership. But when we get into 6C, the secretary and treasurer can be the same member.
Right. So there you go. So that's a bit complicated. So as you can see, each organisation, is different in terms of what its constitution has. And now that was interesting. You said about half plus 1 for the quorum. So if you've got 8 members, then you have to have 5 to make a quorum. So but if you had 7, then you only need, you need 4. So yep. Thank you, Danielle. Okay. So breakout room 3, you were looking at the appointment of office holders and how they're appointed. Who's prepared to speak up on that one?
That's me. So
Great,
so
thanks, Scott.
That's all right. So just carry on from Danielle covered part of ours for us. So there was a meeting, number 6 and a meeting, number 8. The chair and vice chair, the appointment of positions was the chair, vice chair, secretary, treasurer, which can be held by the same person in that office, and up to 4 committee members from the general membership. They're elected at the AGM, and half of the committee comes up for re-election every halfway through each term. Sorry, I'm just reading through it there now. I didn't jot it down. And to stay on the committee, you still need a minimum of attendance of 70%. As I said, done at the AGM, and they need to be nominated too. So yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Scott,
So you
was the
can
other
see
one that
quite
they
a
have to
lot
be
of.
voted in by members.
Oh, sorry, what was that?
Sorry. Scott, did you mention, I'm sorry, I just was a bit distracted, and also that they have to be elected in by current members?
No,
of
I
the
didn't.
men's shed?
No, I didn't mention that, Angela. Thank you.
That was in, yeah, so they get appointed by the current members, not, yeah.
What made up a current member?
Well, there was a bit of a list, so yeah, but I can't remember them all.
Right.
So remember that breakout room 1, they were looking at the members, and so the members had no prerequisite for membership. They could be any age or any gender, but they did have to be a natural person.
And it was pretty easy to be disqualified.
Okay, so yeah, fair amount of detail there around how committee members are appointed for this particular one. So you can see the difference between Penola Arts Festival, Penola Festival Association and the Men's Shed. Quite different constitutions, quite different information in there in terms of the detail. The same sections, but then quite different in terms of what they've got as their requirements. So the last group, we're looking at the AGM. Who from group 4 is willing to tell us about the AGM?
Yeah, I'll run through it.
Thanks, David.
So section 8.1 covers off the annual general meeting. Committee shall call an annual general meeting prior to the end of September in accordance with the Act and these rules. The order of business at the meeting shall be the confirmation of the minutes of the previous AGM and of any special general meetings that have held since that meeting, the consideration of the accounts and reports of the committee and the auditor's report, the election of the committee members to vacant positions for a term of 2 years each, and any other business requiring consideration to the shed in general meeting, and the appointment of the auditor for the following year. But we did also raise one of the queries around the auditor. What happens if the auditor, the accounts haven't been audited prior to that AGM? How do you do that?
So,
or can you pass it without?
It says at the annual general meeting, the members shall appoint a person to be auditor. The auditor shall hold office until the next AGM and is eligible for reappointment. If an appointment is not made at the AGM, the committee shall appoint an auditor.
But we're just asking general terms. If you don't have your auditor's report ready, which often people don't, can you just have the meeting anyway?
Well, again, it depends on kind of what's in your constitution and whether, so so this particular one,
11.3 answers that. 11.3 says accounts and reports to be laid before members.
yep,
The accounts, together with the auditor's report on the accounts, the committee statement, and the committee's report shall be laid before members at the annual general meeting.
that's right. So basically, really the whole point of an AGM is to inform your members of what's, the status of your organisation, particularly, the financial status, but also what has happened over the year. So if you haven't actually got those statements, there's kind of no point holding the AGM. So you would have to delay the AGM.
So you'd need a special movement to do it after September if it's not done.
Yes.
Yes. So this is where sometimes, you can get yourself tied up in knots trying to comply with your constitution. And that's at the point where you might kind of maybe, if you're on the governing committee for this organisation, you might kind of say, well, maybe we might want to, have a change in our constitution, have our AGM, in October or November, if you find that you're not able to meet those requirements. But generally speaking, auditors, usually do provide their kind of audits and the financial accounts and everything usually are done by September. But yeah, it certainly is something that, as I mentioned, you can change your constitution as long as you comply with how you change it according to your current constitution.
And I think an organisation that I'm involved with actually changed the constitution because I believe it used to specify that the auditor had to be a CPA, and we've got an accountant locally who's happy to, we're lucky, she volunteers and does a lot of auditing for a lot of community organisations. But I forget she's one but not the other. She might be a CPA and not whatever it said in the constitution. Anyway, so we were able to change the constitution to enable her to voluntarily do our auditing for us, and that might have happened to other groups in some situations as well.
Yeah, great example. So, I mean, basically you can change your constitution so long as, your members approve it and you go through the correct process according to your current constitution about how you change it.
It just can be a challenge getting the numbers at your constitution if nobody wants to come along and get a job.
Yes. All right. So I might just go back to sharing my screen because this is where we get to the end, and we've still got half an hour for questions, so that's good. So we're now just on the final section, just looking at what are the key takeaways, what are some resources that you might be interested in, and what questions you might have. So some of the key takeaways are that all incorporated organisations must by law have governing rules of some sort. You can modify those model rules to suit you, but as I mentioned, if there is an omission or if there's any conflict, then the legislation will overrule it. So while I said you can change your constitution, if you change it to a point that is in conflict with the legislation and the model rules, then that it could potentially be overruled. You must adhere to whatever is in your constitution, your governing rules, but as I said, you can change them. And it's really important that you read the governing rules if you are joining a board. And it's also useful to just remind yourself throughout, maybe once a year, have a little refresh and read them again, remind yourself how many do we need for a quorum? What are our, notice requirements around an AGM? because, you know, it's easy to forget them. So probably some of the things you might want to think about as a board member, have a look at your own governing rules document, and see whether the way you're running your organisation currently is complying with what your rules document states. Hopefully you're not in breach in any way. The other thing maybe to think about is, when was it last reviewed? So usually each governing rules document has a date on it as to when it was, when that was applied. So if it's, you know, more than 10 years ago, you might want to have a review and refresh of it. And think about, do you want to potentially change some elements? But as I said, you have to be careful to not change them to be too much in conflict with what the model rules state and what the legislation states. So some useful resources, and you'll be able to click on the links when we send you the presentation as a PDF. But there are some useful help sheets at the Institute of Community Directors Australia. So you can have a look at www.communitydirectors.com.au. The SA Consumer and Business Services, that's where you can find the example of rules for an incorporated association. And I showed that to you earlier with the example sections. If your organisation is a charitable company, then it could be registered with the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profit Commission. They also have some useful fact sheets, and they also have a template constitution that you could have a look at. And the Governance Institute of Australia also has some fact sheets as well that are useful. So have a look check out those links, and you can do some further research of your own. Katie.
A question from Danielle. If we can't find our governing rules, how do we go about that? Where are they?
Right. So you could potentially look at the ACNC website and do a search there. If you're a not-for-profit organisation, you might find them there. If they're not there and you are an incorporated association, then they should have a copy lodged with the SA Consumer and Business Services, so you can get in touch with them. And if you get no joy out of those two, then you might need to start hunting down previous presidents and secretaries and see if you can find a copy from someone.
And another one from Janet. Are there any general legislated requirements for auditors, e.g., do they have to have any specific qualifications or experience? Like going on the back of what Lou said, I guess.
I don't actually know the answer to that one.
Is your volunteer one, Lou, an accountant at base, or?
I think generally speaking, you know, they have to be, you know, an accountant or an auditor, a chartered accountant or a certified practicing accountant. But I'm not sure that whether it's legislated or not. But it's certainly good practice to have a professional do it, not just, you know, your friend from down the road.
And I've got another one here from Kerry. We have a very old rule of association for our local sporting club, which is well overdue for review. Do we need to take it to a lawyer once we've reworked it, or can it just be passed at a general meeting?
Yeah, no, you don't need to spend money on going to a lawyer. As I said, have a look at the example rules and the template rules that are on the ACNC website. Compare it to your own, and make a decision about what you might want to change. You can make your own changes and then have it passed at a special meeting according to what you want. I mean, if you're feeling like you want a lawyer to have a look at it and make sure it is above board, then by all means do that. But I know that lawyers, can charge fairly high, so you're certainly not required to go to a lawyer. And if you're an incorporated association, the SA Consumer and Business Services might be able to help you out as well, the state government.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is there somebody or someone you can just get it checked with if you're creating a new one and you don't know?
Yeah.
So that would be right. So who was that? The SA?
So that was the SA. If I go back to, I'll just share that screen again. SA Consumer and Business Services. So I've got a link there to the kind of example rules, but if you kind of Google Incorporated Association South Australia, you will eventually find the contact details for SA Consumer and Business Services, which is a government department for South Australian government, and they will have some contact details that you can email or ring someone and get some advice. So if you're an incorporated association, they'll be able to help you.
There's another question from Craig. Did you want to ask that one, Craig?
Yeah, thanks, Katie. So I'm on various groups, and one of the boards requires me to be registered as a director, and the others I'm just on as either a part of the exec or general committee, depending on how I'm on those. And I went looking around trying to work out, well, why is that? I could work out there was something to do with ABN and ACN and those types of things, but I got that far and thought, oh, well, that is what it is. But you've just triggered me to think, oh, yeah, I'll ask that question again.
Yeah, so if you're a company limited by guarantee, then you have to have a director ID, and you have to have your details registered with ASIC, and so there are, as I said, there are different requirements according to what type of legal entity the organisation is. And so some will require you to have kind of a higher bar. And so if you're a company, then you've got to have a director ID and you kind of be registered, and that information has to be kept up to date. So if you moved house, they would the organisation is required to notify ASIC of any change in director details. Whereas if you're an incorporated association, I don't think you certainly don't need to have a director ID. You might still have to kind of provide information to the regulator, but yeah. So the answer is it depends on what legal structure is and what legislation each organisation is registered under as to what the requirements are in terms of notifying the regulator with levels of detail.
Cool. Yeah, that's sort of what I got to, but you've explained it a lot better. Cool. Thank you.
No worries. Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got one, Natasha.
Sure.
So who actually regulates just your incorporated organisations like your football club, your netball club, that sort of thing? Obviously ASIC doesn't waste their time on that. Who does that?
Yeah. So that's that state government department. SA Consumer and Business Services. So each state government has a different department that regulates incorporated associations, which are your smaller clubs. And so they're the organisation that kind of keeps records of your governing rules document, and that you have to provide reports to, financial reports to.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? No? All right. Well, we have another fun poll, another fun question. So get your phone out again, and answer the question for me. What did you learn today that surprised you? All right, we've still got some people typing, but we've got a few common things coming up. All right, looks like everyone's finished. So we've got a few smaller ones there. If you move house, you need to update the government as a director. Make sure you follow up with documents, registers if required by the rules, the range of organisation types that there are, the time things are allowed to slip. It's a responsibility. There are questions I can ask or find answers to. The importance of following and understanding your rules of association. And then the four biggest, most common ones, good revision. We need to look into our constitution, liability, and I know more than I realise. So that's great. I'm glad that for some people you already knew some of this, so that's really good. I'm glad to hear it. So I think, yep, that's the end of what I wanted to share with you today. Katie would love it if you use this QR code to answer the survey. So it would be really good if you could do that. And this is the first of 4 workshops that we're delivering for community members. And we've just covered constitutions. The next one is about effective meetings, modern meeting requirements. And that, follows on from, the constitutions where we kind of looked at the meetings that's in the constitution. So we're going to have a look in a bit more detail around ways that you can manage meetings. So that one is in October, and then we have 2 more after that. I think we've got the details on the next slide. Hopefully everyone has got their camera out and done that QR code.
Can I just say something? That because the funding comes from the Future Drought Fund, there are a couple of questions in there that may seem a little bit at odds with what we've just done, but it's about building community resilience and community capacity, which then flows on to agricultural areas in times of drought. So just take it for what it is and answer as best as you can, because that's where our funding comes from. Thank you.
Yeah, good one. Okay, so yeah, effective meeting procedures is on the 21st of October. Then we've got a bit of a break with Christmas and school holidays. So we're coming back again in February to look at strategic planning and hopefully making it easy. And then in March, we're going to delve into a little bit of detail around understanding financial reports. And I'm not an accountant, just like I'm not a lawyer. So it will be a very kind of layperson perspective of what do you really need to know as a board member around the finances. So they're the next 3 workshops that we're going to be holding. You don't have to attend all of them. You can mix and match and just attend one, or you can attend all 4. And if you want to register for those, get onto the MacKillop Group website under events. Okay.
Well, thank you very much, Natasha. That was certainly a great introduction. Makes you drill down and look at constitutions that usually I glaze over whenever we talk about it. So
it is a very dry topic. It's hard to kind of make it too interesting. So I apologise if it was a little bit dry, but that's the nature of it. But yeah, happy to answer any other questions that people have. We've managed to finish early, which is always good. But if you do have any other questions, I'm here to answer them. Nope. Sounds like everyone's ready to finish up and enjoy the rest
So
of
I
the
will,
evening.
yeah, I will send out the presentation from today to those people who attended today. So thank you very much for attending, everyone, and thank you, Natasha, again
Thank you.
for your presentation.
I will stop recording. How do I stop
Katie?
recording?